Hello, and welcome to One Week, One Year, a podcast where we watch and discuss a year of film history every week, starting from 1895, the dawn of cinema, and this week is 1911. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Ellie. I'm a film projectionist, currently unemployed, and joining me as always is...
I am Glenn Covell, a filmmaker.
And...
somewhat employed?
Yeah. I really gotta, get a job. I mean, unemployment's nice, but gotta get back in the biz, in the industry,
Yeah. Gotta get back into that biz.
So what's up, Glenn? What's been going on?
I don't know. It's been, I can feel spring creeping in.
Yeah.
It's been sunny. I've been reading more. I've been writing more.
That's good.
It's been a good week, I think.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm pretty pleased with this week because I got my first vaccine. Yeah. It didn't hurt really, and I didn't really have any bad symptoms from it. Though I got a very I don't know how to phrase it, like a very rough email, right at the same time that I was stepping in to get the vaccine. And so it was hard for me to tell what was vaccine symptoms and what was me just ugh. But whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very exciting. Very exciting. I hope you get your vaccine soon, Glenn.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, as soon as as soon as they let me, I will.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we are a film history podcast, as we spoke about in the beginning. We're talking about all these ancient movies, and looking through the vast treasure troves of the early 1900s to bring to you the quality and the analysis that you deserve. So if you're watching...
Thank you, Jeff Goldblum.
Oh my God. If you're watching on YouTube right now, stay tuned because we will be playing the movies along while we talk about them. And if you are listening on the podcast, or if you would like to watch them of your own accord, we'll have to cut off a lot of the movies because they're longer than the amount of time that we're talking about them. There's a playlist that is linked in the description of both the YouTube and the podcast, and you can watch the movies right there beforehand, often with music. So that's good.
They're all very old movies. They're all in public domain, and so
yeah. So don't sue us.
Yeah, and don't give us weird emails, YouTube, because some music video also used public domain footage.
Oh my God, what garbage! Yeah, I forget what it was. It was some one of the recent uploads that I did. We had a public domain movie that we can do whatever we want with, and somebody used that same public domain movie in their documentary, and so we got flagged for using their documentary footage when we just really both used the same public domain footage. Garbage.
Yeah.
Anyway, we like to start out every episode before we get into by just complaining about everything. Oh my God. By giving ourselves a little context for the era of film that we're talking about. And so we'll listen to a little bit of the news from 1911. Glenn, would you take it away?
The news of the year, 1911. Up first, the world of aviation. Charles W. Chappell wins a medal at the first Industrial Aeroplane Show. The only African-American who brought his own invented aeroplane. Last year, Eugene B. Ely was the first man to launch an aircraft from a ship, and this year he becomes the first man to land on one. The dawn of aerial combat. Bombs are dropped from an aeroplane in Libya during the Italo-Turkish War. And finally, the first air mile flights take place on February 1911. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City kills 146. The fire's deadly effects were exacerbated by untrusting and unscrupulous owners who locked the workers inside. The Colt M1911 pistol becomes the standard issue sidearm of the U.S. Army, forever making it impossible to research things from 1911 without search results getting clogged up by gun guys. The Sherman Antitrust Act breaks up the giant Standard Oil, ending its monopoly and breaking it into 34 separate oil companies. The first Indianapolis 500 race is held. The winner had an average speed of 74.59 miles per hour. The Nuclear meteorite crash lands in Egypt. On its surface, evidence of water on Mars. The Mona Lisa has been stolen from the Louvre. The thief, Vincenzo Perugia, keeps it in his apartment for 2 years before he's caught. The race to the South Pole concludes when Roald Amundson's expedition makes ground. The Xinhai Revolution begins in China, soon to lead to the end of the final Chinese dynasty. As the revolution comes to a close at the end of the year, Sun Yat-sen is elected the provisional president of the new Republic of China. Mary Pickford leaves biograph for the greener pastures of the Independent Moving Pictures Company.
Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
Mary Pickford, she was she was the biograph girl, but now she's the IMP girl. She's an imp girl. I think she made a few movies with IMP this year, but I think they kind of only really survive in fragments, or there's like one or something. I didn't watch it. Who cares about Mary Pickford? Although you do, because you just got the Mary Pickford cocktail ingredients.
I did.
Right?
I had to buy some perhaps overpriced liqueur in order to make it. But yeah, it's a good cocktail.
Which was the one that was overpriced? Like, what's in it?
Luxardo liqueur, which is a cherry flavored.
Oh,
thing.
Can't you just like get some maraschino juice and pour it in there?
I mean, not really. Like maraschino or maraschino liqueur is its own thing, I guess. I don't really know. I learn all of my cocktail and like bartending things from like bougie YouTube sites, and so if I learn how to do anything, I learn to do it the most like exacting way possible.
Fair enough.
Although there's plenty of times where it's like, you got to make this with like this one brand of rye or something like that. And I'm like, I'm going to use bourbon. I don't care. But we're not here to talk about alcohol. We're here to talk about old movies.
Yeah. Soon alcohol will be banished, so we're not going to be able to do anything about that.
We'll be banished and more popular than ever before.
So after a terrible week last week where we couldn't start with our guy, and we had to start with the monster, D.W. Griffith, we can start with our guy again. It's George Méliès.
Our boy Méliès.
This will be his penultimate year of films, which is sad.
It is very sad. I was going to say bittersweet, but there's not even a lot of sweetness to it.
No, especially because these are kind of just okay. I'm looking forward to, I think some of the stuff next year will be a little more impressive and interesting. Mm-hmm. But the two that he made this year, or at least the two that survived, are Baron Munchausen's Dream and The Diabolical Church Window.
Indeed. Not top tier Méliès. Kind of, I would say middle of the road to lower tier Méliès. Really.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have his weirdness back in our lives.
Absolutely. Movies are getting so serious these days.
They really are. The more popular films from the 1910s seem like they're very dour, very serious.
Yeah.
And yeah, I appreciated Méliès's just like fast-paced, manic, weird kind of supernatural vibes that he always brings.
Yeah. He made both of these movies for Pathé. At this point he has sold his Star Films and all of his assets to Pathé, which will be his undoing, really. These types of movies that, these kind of féerie movies that Méliès was making, kind of were just not popular at all by this point. And, Pathé hired him for his clout basically, but he's like just nobody wanted his stuff anymore. And I guess the one that we could talk about or first is Baron Munchausen's Dream, which is definitely, it's definitely a Méliès joint, but there are some supposed Pathé corruptive influences on this one. So it's basically like a bunch of fun vignettes, one after another. It's a classic Méliès setup of somebody dreaming and weird stuff happening.
Yeah, it's a nightmare film of like, I mean, I think there's a couple different titles of it. I mean, there's Baron Munchausen's Dream, The Hallucinations of Baron Munchausen, Monsieur le Baron dined too well, which I think is my favorite one. That
I didn't see that one.
He ate too much at dinner, and now he's having a bad dream.
Well, the reason there are so many different titles in English is because this one and no Méliès movies past this point were ever released in the U.S. Or were never released outside of France, so they never had official English translations.
It does. I think some of the vignettes have some cool things in them, but the sort of corrupting influence, if I'm remembering correctly, is the runtime. It runs a little long for a Méliès movie.
It lags. I mean, I think Méliès like to keep the pace up and keep showing you new stuff. But this movie is basically like one dream vignette and then another one and then another one and then another one for like 10 minutes. And it gets a little stale. But I liked like sort of the way that it introduces his dream world is that there's like a mirror like a giant mirror behind his bed. And so initially the dreams are kind of being presented from within the mirror, but it's not actually like a double exposure effect. It's like a stage that's behind the mirror because Baron Munchausen is I don't know what that was. Baron Munchausen is able to walk through the mirror into the dreams, which is so fun.
Well, and also there's the bit where he like gets up from his bed and he's looking at himself in the mirror, and so there's two actors who are playing the Baron, mirroring each other's movements, which is very cool. And that's something that is still the effect of having a mirror on film with two actors on either side is still something that is occasionally used today.
Like in Magic Mike XXL, where they do that fake mirror routine at the very end of the film. Have you seen it?
I haven't. I still haven't. I gotta get to it. I was thinking of the deleted scene in Terminator 2, which is not a recent movie, but not as recent as Magic Mike XSL.
We'll get to both of them though.
We will.
This also, one of the vignettes is, I mean, we can't say this for sure until we watch next week's movies, but maybe his final moon face. There's a face in the moon.
I hadn't thought about that.
With a gross long tongue that's like a tentacle that comes out of the nose.
He had to step it up, you know? He had to escalate his moon face effects.
And then like it's kind of a fun effect, like, a tentacle just kind of bursts out of the nose of the moon and kind of swipes around and everything, and then it kind of fades into a trunk of an elephant for the next vignette.
An elephant with reading glasses.
Oh, I didn't notice the glasses. Oh my god.
It doesn't really have. I think it's kind of interesting that it's called Baron Munchausen's Dream, because it doesn't, as far as I can tell, it doesn't really have anything to do with the stories associated with the Baron Munchausen character / historical figure.
Right.
It's kind of just, they're just slapping that IP on there to get to draw the crowd, I think.
Which we've seen some of that kind of stuff before, like with Sherlock Holmes and I don't know. We've seen it, definitely. Have you seen the Terry Gilliam Baron Munchausen movie?
A long time ago, yeah.
I love it. It's so fun and wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be, right?
It's one of the most Terry Gilliam-esque movies. Yeah.
And then the other one that he made this year was the Diabolical Church Window, which is not, which was, I think, rediscovered pretty recently. This wasn't on the original like Flickr Alley Méliès box set. It like was on the second one that they had to release with the newer discoveries a couple years later. And this one is basically like the devil puts a wizard to sleep, and then he just plays pranks because it's a Méliès movie.
Classic George Méliès setup. The devil puts a wizard to sleep and then plays pranks. Yeah, I mean, I read that this is an incomplete version of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt fairly complete. It didn't feel like there were any glaring things where it's like, oh, something's missing here.
Right.
But yeah,
at least there's not much of a narrative to it, so it's nothing would really be missing from a narrative perspective.
It's mostly like some camera tricks, a lot of pyrotechnics.
The classic Méliès thing also of someone trying to grab or hug a pretty lady, and then she disappears when he does it, and then he grasps the air.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to say about these. They're not really narratives necessarily. They're just sort of setups for some fun and games.
Yeah, they're pretty simple, but if you're putting on some goofy Méliès, then they fit the goof quotient,
They would be, once parties are a thing that happen again. I do feel like Méliès trick films are a good thing to put on in the background.
Oh yeah. We need to make like a great silent movie party background playlist.
Oh my god, yes. Yeah. Oh man, that's something I miss, of like going to someone's party and there's just a movie playing low in the background.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't want to talk to anyone, you can just sit and watch the movie for a little while.
We all thought about parties so deeply in this time of no parties that we know now how to put together the greatest party. We have to have certain atmospheres here and there, a snack table. People don't think about. No, they always think about the snack table. Anyway,
the great innovation we've come up with from a year of no parties is snacks on a table.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of the guy that sticks to the snack table.
It's one of the safest places to be at a party.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Some movies that would not be good to play at parties are D.W. Griffith movies.
Oh, great transition, and
thank you.
Truer words have never been said.
This guy makes some. Oh my god!
This I call this 1911 the year that D.W. Griffith just doubles down.
Yeah.
On everything.
Yeah. There's no turning back with him anymore.
No,
there's no more fun, house robbery movies. There's no eagles picking up babies.
Yeah.
It's
he no longer has like plausible deniability about his bigotry.
Yeah.
Really
the only deniability he has is that he made one movie that was about the Union and not about the Confederacy.
Yeah, I've this week, while like going through Wikipedia to find movies, I've been waging a one-man war against dumb, incorrect D.W. Griffith facts.
Mm-hmm.
Like things that he invented, close-ups or continuity editing or cross-cutting or any of those things. It's
D.W. Griffith has made some good movies, but I think that we owe it to film history to take away the worship of D.W. Griffith as this innovator and the man who invented cinema. Because
I mean, I do think he has like innovative filmmaking techniques that he's using, but he didn't invent them. Like it's not.
Yeah.
They're less groundbreaking more than it is just sort of like he's using them.
He's refining things and using more advanced techniques as more than just a parlor trick.
For sure.
And he has much more of an interest in storytelling than a lot of people did when he started off, too.
Yeah. I also, watching some of these and like doing research about like the stuff that he's sort of contributed to film language. Not to diminish his influence as a director, though I do love to diminish his influence as a director, is I wonder sometimes how much the sort of like competent film language stuff in his movies is Billy Bitzer, who was also a director and was the main cinematographer for I think all of his movies or all of his main ones. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't necessarily account for the sort of like the noticeably better editing of them or anything. I have no idea if there's any truth to that. I just want to take some credit away from him, I think.
Well, since we're talking about we can get to the gross stuff in a minute, but since we're talking about apocryphal D.W. Griffith information, we could start with the Lonedale Operator, which is thankfully not a racist movie of his.
Yeah,
it's a neutral film.
Yeah,
but it's listed in certain places that it's. What did you say that it was like? It was either like the first close up or
there was a thing on Wiki, and this is Wikipedia, so obviously this is just like some person put this there. They had the release of the Lonedale Operator as a significant sort of advancement in film history because it was their words. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but it was something like the first successful close-up in a film. And first of all, what does that even mean? Like,
they tried, but they failed. You know,
it's like, we had a close-up. I don't know. It just, we were too far away. And it's like, no, nothing about that is true. I mean, I tried to think about it very specifically because there is a somewhat unusual for this time punch into a close-up to show what someone is holding. That is sort of a big reveal in the movie. That
we have seen that before, but it's well done here.
It is, yeah. And I think that's why it kind of sticks out as like, ooh, this is new.
Yeah.
And who hadn't done the insane due diligence that we have been doing of watching damn near everything.
Due Diligence, the podcast.
But yeah, I mean, I want to say that like, what's his name? God damn it! Now I'm blanking.
David Wark Griffith.
George Albert Smith had
Yeah.
like punch-ins to close-ups to show things and to reveal things. Not often.
Yeah.
Or probably not quite as elegant as it's used here, but it's like that sort of mechanical function of cutting to a close-up of something to reveal more information is not a new thing.
Yeah. I'll have to search through my notes from previous weeks because I know on a few movies I wrote a punch-in with lots of all caps and lots of exclamation points. Briefly, this movie is a woman
sort of
takes over.
It's a loose remake of The Lonely Villa.
In some ways.
Yeah.
In some ways, it definitely involves some like robbers trying to get in a door, and then that's actually quite true. I'll say how. So there's a woman who is the daughter of an operator of a train station, and he is, I don't know, sick, was he, or just getting old, basically?
Yeah.
And he hands over the operation of the train station to her, and they find out that there is a delivery on a train coming up of some payroll money for a company, big money bags, and so they're trying to make the accommodations for the delivery of the money, but there are some no good rootin' tooters who are trying to track down the train and steal the money, and as the money is delivered, they basically hold her up inside of the train station, and she locks herself in her office, and so the similarity with the Lonedale Operator is that it's these guys trying to get into the office, and her using a telegram instead of a telephone to send out for help, which I thought was actually kind of fun because, like, I don't know if I've seen a telegram portrayed in movies yet, and she's like really telegramming with emotion, you know. She, like, you can see like that she's like as she's telegramming, and something I was wondering was that if you could actually, it shows what she said later in a card, but I was wondering if you would actually be able to see what she's telegramming. Oh, you tried?
No, I'm shaking my head no, because I very much doubt that they took the time to accurately have her, like, you know, telegraph out the correct Morse code in that scene.
That'd be nice, though. I mean, it'd be like a good Easter egg for people that can understand Morse code.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of parallel action happening in this movie. There's the people breaking in. There's her in the station. There are people on the train. There are cops in waiting. There's the person receiving the telegram.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of stuff happening together that fits quite well. Apparently, there's over 100 cuts in this movie. I saw that being noted somewhere. I don't know if it's especially a lot, or I mean, it kind of seems like a lot, but they flowed so well that I actually didn't notice how many cuts there were in this movie until it was pointed out. And as the thieves break in, they hold her at gunpoint, but then she pulls a gun on them, and so there's a bit of a standoff, and they are not going to fire on her, basically, because she's holding out the gun, and there is a blue tint that's indicating that the lights are out in the room.
Oh yeah, that was good.
I actually noticed that in a couple of movies this year. That I think like a piece of cinematic language that's developing is blue light means it's dark, or like a blue tint means it's dark out, like nighttime or the lights are off. But eventually her telegraph goes through, and the cops come at just the right moment and get the bad guys. And it is revealed the whole time that in the dark, she did not actually have a gun. She had a wrench that she held up and made it look like a gun. And so that is the punch-in there, is the close-up on the wrench, so you can go, oh, it was a wrench the whole time.
Yeah, and I also like how once that is revealed, the lead character and the cops all just laugh at the dumb robbers as they're taken away. Yeah, I mean, I think this was better than the Lonely Villa. I think it feels a bit more refined. I think the editing in it is very good for this time period.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is sort of like, okay, like another woman trapped in a room while, like, cross-cutting with people coming to help her get out of it.
Yeah. At this point, DW is still making, 50, 100 movies a year, something like that.
And a lot of them are the same movies. Like,
yeah,
he's repeating the same plots a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you could keep that up if you weren't.
Yeah, turns out the reason he made so many movies is because he was making the same one a bunch of times.
Including ones about the Civil War.
Ooh. Yeah, a lot of those.
We could kind of talk about them broadly, I guess. The Civil War movies. Once again, more Civil War movies. Particularly the battle, Swords and Hearts, and would you call the Trust? I mean, the Trust isn't about the war itself, but
no, but it is.
Yeah, it involves the war. The battle I just want to touch on really briefly because it is from the Union's perspective only, which is unique. It features a D.W. Griffith theme of like deserters in war. Basically, it's this big battle scene, and you're seeing all of this. The scope of the battle is actually pretty impressive, and you're seeing all of this chaos happening. And it's zooming into a bunch of smaller vignettes that are happening around the battle. Like there's a deserter, and there's like features happening in houses around where that's happening. And my mom actually walked in while I was watching this one, and having seen a lot of the older movies, and she was saying that it looked really impressive, considering what she'd seen.
Yeah, I think it does. I think the a lot of the battle stuff is it's well staged and it's well shot, and I think it makes the most out of like what, how many extras they have. Like they can't do these like enormous like sweeping shots of like people going over hills and things, but it's framed in such a way that it maximizes the sort of, we get soldiers in the foreground, and then sort of like smoke going through the middle of the shot, and then people in the background. It's well.
Yeah, they still have like probably a couple dozen extras.
Yeah.
That really fills out the scenes. The basic thing of it is that like there's a Union group that's getting attacked, and they are trying to hold off the Confederates until reinforcements can come, and there's all this other stuff happening at the same time.
This had opening credits also, which is not unheard of, but it's still kind of a rarity, I think.
Yeah,
as far as I can tell,
it's happened on some other DW movies, but yeah, I guess it's starting to become more common, I think. And another one is Swords and Hearts, which is also includes like some of the themes. Another thing that he touches on a lot of a women taking men's place in the war. The other time it was in House with Closed Shutters. Yeah. It was due to cowardice. But in this one, basically there's a woman who's in love with this Confederate guy, and she sees that he's about to get ambushed by the evil Unionists. So she dresses up as him and rides on his horse and rides away to pull them away from him. This one, is like also a love triangle, which is another big DW thing happening.
He loves those. I mean, like I said, with like the doubling down thing, I feel like I noticed so many more things where it's like, okay, like this is something he's just going to put in every movie now.
Yeah. Not looking forward.
No. There is, I can say one nice thing about this one. There is a nice sort of reveal of someone is shot and they sort of react to it. And then there's kind of a reveal of the blood that they've been wounded. But then it doesn't actually go anywhere. It doesn't ever come back.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, she's shot, but she's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't care for this one so much.
Yeah. And then there was another one, His Trust, which is a two-parter and is disgusting.
Absolutely revolting. Difficult to watch. Like, one of the first we watched, I think, on the podcast, where I was like, I don't want to watch this. Like, this is really uncomfortable, and I'm just so morally opposed to pretty much everything happening on screen. And even like the way it's being shown on screen, I hate it.
Yeah. The full title of this is, if you want to understand why we are revolted, is His Trust, the faithful devotion and self-sacrifice of an old Negro servant.
Servant is, that's an interesting choice of words there, DW.
That's true.
That's some revisionist bullshit right there.
Oh man. And so it's like this classic, like, this classic Civil War or Confederate fiction of the slaves who, were really cared about the family, and they were a member of the family, and they were honorable, and they were like white people, but also still they sleep on the ground outside.
Yeah.
Even though they sacrifice all of their money and life to the daughter of a Confederate soldier who dies is the idea. So it's just about this great this wonderful Negro who he loves the family that he is enslaved to so much.
The note I have for this movie is this is the 1911 equivalent of those news stories that are like, guy takes 8th job to pay for the orphan melting machine to be turned off. And it's like, that's not heartwarming.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't a heartwarming story. Like, this is just terrible. Like, nothing that's happening in this story is remotely heartwarming. Even though it is you can tell watching it that it's intended to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it's like it's I mean, it's respecting black people in only the barest bones way of, like, respecting them for how good they are at being slaves.
Yeah.
What I wrote for this was the giving tree without the message, yeah. Because this whole 30 minutes is this guy sacrificing his own meager amounts of money that he has and all of his energy and time and care for this kid who it becomes sort of a surrogate kid to him, who is white.
After the Civil War, and he has been freed also. Yeah.
He can be free, but he chooses to just give his life to his owners. And at the end, it's this kind of somber thing of him kind of reflecting on his service and how good he was, and then dying possibly. Like, he just kind of lays down and maybe he just dies because he's old at that point. It's horrible.
The giving tree without the message, I think, is the most apt description of this. It's as if at the end of the giving tree, you're like, oh yeah, great, the tree is gone. Everything worked out.
That was a good tree. That tree gave everything.
Yeah.
So good on the tree.
Yeah. Terrible. If you're watching every movie, don't watch those because they're bad. He did also make DW did make one movie that I genuinely did enjoy.
Yeah.
He managed it.
That I'm assuming you're talking about The Miser's Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this one, I mean, it is DW once again sort of weaponizing cute children in order to get the audience on his side. Which, I mean,
that's a little pessimistic, maybe.
I mean, that's the thing, is like Pixar does the same thing. It works very well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I was thinking, I was like, damn it, this one is charming. Like, this one I do like.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's no race stuff in this. Even though it's about a miser, he's not coded that way. So
right, yeah.
This one, there's like a poor family, and they have a miser who lives upstairs, who has a lot of money, who takes pity on them, and it is nice to them. And there's also a parallel story of a thief named Jules who.
His name is Jules. I don't know if I picked up on that.
I don't think I picked up on it until I just said it now.
Oh.
And he fixes to. Oh, what does he do? He's just gotten
he's just gotten out of prison, but he's kind of on the run because he's stealing food for himself.
Yeah.
This also is the first, I think, credited film role of Lionel Barrymore.
Yep.
Of the Barrymore acting, I don't know, Dominion.
Yeah. So Jules the Thief is the great uncle of Drew Barrymore.
Yeah. What are they? The dynasty. That's what it is. The acting dynasty of the Barrymores.
We've got the Coppolas and the Barrymores.
Yeah. So that's significant. I think he also appears in The Battle, but he wasn't credited in that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he ends up kind of trying to sleep on the roof of the building that the other two characters live in, and the kid is kind of starving, and she sees that some of the food that he stole, and she kind of inches up to him, and he ends up sharing his food with her, which is actually a really cute moment. Like, I thought it was nice, and they have some fun little chemistry, and they look very nice together. And so the next thing that happens is some other thieves come up, some very debonair thieves, who are fixing to rob the miser. They hold him up in his room, and as they're trying to break into his safe. And a lot of this is them trying to get the safe combination out of him, and him refusing to open it. And eventually, they grab a hold of the kid, and they start using her as a threat to tell him to open the safe. They'll drop the kid out the window,
which they threaten to do by holding the kid out of the window. And the way that they filmed this is they held a kid out a window.
It was the rough and tumble days of early film.
I was like, making this movie must have broken a few laws, even in 1911. I feel like, I would hope. I don't know.
And a very diabolical twist, because he's still like, you're not going to drop her, it's not going to happen, whatever. Like, I can't give away my precious money. Is that she's being held out on a rope, and they put a candle under the rope, and there's a close up of the candle burning the rope so she's getting closer and closer to falling like 6 stories down the building. She, I guess it's actually not like the roof. It's kind of like a platform that's below the roof, that Jules is lying down on and making his camp on, basically. And so she is able to see her buddy Jules, and like she throws, what was it, her shoe, or she throws something down to get his attention. Mm-hmm. He realizes that his little buddy is hanging from the window about to die. And so he rushes to go get the cops, to go and help him. But the cops don't believe him, because they told him to get out. Yeah, he's a thief they don't like, and they told him to get out of town. And now he's back here telling them tall tales, and they don't believe him, and like they try and lock him up again.
Yeah, and he has to plead to the chief of police / judge.
Yeah. And then, like, after they send him away, the people go like, what was that he was talking about? That there's a child in danger? Like, maybe we should check that out,
I guess that's our job or whatever. Yeah. And yeah, this is another instance of good use of intercutting between these like parallel things happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah, then they, the cops eventually do. I don't know if they let him out first and then they all run to the.
He leads them to the building.
Yeah.
But they were taking their sweet old time until they actually see the kid, and they're like, "Oh, he wasn't kidding." Yeah, and then they get they save the day and the end.
And then the miser shares all his money with the poor family living downstairs and buys them all nice furniture. and food.
So some more class stuff from DW, which is nice to see because it's not race stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fun little movie.
Yeah, it was one of his only movies that didn't feel derivative of any of his earlier stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it fits the sort of one reel, roughly 15-minute running time really well.
Yeah.
It's paced well. Like it's, it doesn't feel like it's lagging. It's moving along. It tells like a good complete story, with multiple kind of threads.
Indeed. One last DW movie that we can talk about is The Last Drop of Water, which is a Western that he made. It was before the time that the words based on a true story were invented, and so it is suggested by the lines to Sir Philip Sidney, who, upon the field of blood, dying, gave the last drop of water for the sake of brotherhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Never mind the spoilers. Just right up front.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I guess you're kind of anticipating it the whole movie. It's another love triangle movie. It's a love triangle in the Old West. And it is not just a love triangle, but it's like a kind of like nice guy / like a-hole dynamic.
That classic dynamic.
Yeah, time is a flat circle there. Everybody's like so D.W. Griffith is like, I'm a nice guy, And yeah, so it opens with the nice guy trying to court a lady, and then the drunkard kind of swagger guy shows up, and he's
the bad
scared
boy.
off. Yeah. And this is another in not just a love triangle, but also like DW's obsession with cuckoldry. because this guy is like, he just seems very cucked,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think there is that element in a lot of his other movies of a love triangle and of kind of a similar dynamic to this, but this one is definitely the most like, oh man, like
yeah. I guess in a love triangle there's often going to be a loser, but in this one he really acts like a loser. And it's called The Last Drop of Water because the drunkard and the woman end up getting married, and the nice guy is just kind of sitting there waiting in the wings. They're out on stagecoaches, and they're running out of water, and they're besieged by Native Americans, and they're trying to go and find a stream to get some more water, and the drunkard and the nice guy go out together, and they're kind of out in the heat, and basically they're starting to die, and the nice guy collapses, and the drunkard has a change of heart to not be a jerk, and he gives the last bit of water to the nice guy, who sips it and is revived, and then the bad guy dies.
Yeah.
And
who is established is like a very bad dude.
Yes, yes, he is a very bad dude. Like a kind of abusive drunk husband.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's so many movies about alcoholism in this time. I guess it was on the mind.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see maybe booze was just like hot topic, considering that Prohibition was around the corner.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely like, it was in the air, I think, and you can see that in the films from this time period for sure.
One other thing about this movie is that it is a white hat and black hat in the West, except that the white hat and black hat are switched. Who is like the good guy and who's the bad guy? I don't know if that dynamic was simply to distinguish the two of them visually, and they hadn't come up with the whole visual language of it yet. But it was kind of interesting that we were seeing it there as in a Western.
Yeah. This also is a Western that was shot. I'm not sure exactly where it was shot, if it was California or somewhere else, but it's shot in a real desert, which certainly helps a lot.
Yeah, lots of extras and props too, which are good.
They are no longer doing the New Jersey Western, as they were known. So yeah, it's got some nice kind of Western production value to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of New Jersey Westerns, Elise Guy has started Solax.
Yeah.
Her film company.
Her American film company.
Yep. And she's got it outfitted in New Jersey. And one of the earlier movies that she made for that film company is Parson Sue, which was a Western.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this one. I mean, it is unfortunately the entire like climax, like third act of the movie is lost.
Yeah.
And so it kind of there's just a title card that explains like how everything is wrapped up, and you're like, we don't actually get to see any of this. We don't get to see the big fight at the end.
Poochie went to the moon and lived there forever with his friends and went away.
It's also so silly. This is like, even for an Elise Guy movie, like she makes a lot of very silly movies. I feel like this one there's just a gleeful silliness to the whole thing that I really responded to.
She has a lot of fun with her movies.
Yeah. This movie has a lot of like crowd scenes. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of a thing that the video essay Eddie Freeman Painting pointed out, which is when you put a bunch of people in a shot, any emotion feels really big. And I think that I thought about that a lot watching this movie, of how like I'm thinking of a specific example now. But there's a lot of scenes in like a saloon or a shop where someone will react to something, and rather than just having one person react to it, we get to see a whole crowd kind of react to it. And it makes everything feel very like impactful.
Yeah. But often in a goofy way. I mean, this is like a hammy movie.
It's so hammy and goofy.
Yeah. About I didn't know what the term parson before, but it's like somebody affiliated with religion, basically. So she comes to like not an outlaw town. What would you call it? Like a sort of,
a frontier
lawless,
town.
A frontier town. Yeah. She comes to a frontier town full of gruff men as a clergy member, and she tries to convert all of them. And she puts up a sign next to the water trough that says "Cleanliness is next to godliness." And all of these, dirty Western men are like, "Oh man, we gotta impress this lady," So they, they're all like getting nice, and so there's just like a gaggle of dudes like trying to out Jesus each other to impress Parson Sue.
And it kind of does the thing that Elise Guy loves to do, which is kind of to play with gender roles a little bit, and kind of like traditional ideas of like masculinity and femininity. And so there's like a whole scene of all of the very macho cowboys who are all just like bathing themselves with soap and water out in the middle of town. It just in a very very goofy way that you would not immediately think of when you're like, oh yeah, a bunch of rootin' tootin' we're saying rootin' tootin' in this episode a lot.
It's a good adjective.
It really is. We got to bring it back. There is a specific character in this movie that I wonder if is intended to be like the gay cowboy, or if it's just because Elise Guy is French, and I feel like that has come out a lot in her movies, where I can't tell if it's intentional or not, or
is
if it's
it gay
just,
or just European.
Yeah, exactly. If so, that feels significant though.
Yeah, I didn't actually notice a gay cowboy.
There's one cowboy specifically that is like very clearly wearing makeup, which in 1900s and 1910s movies is not unusual.
Right.
But just one character really sticks out as having like very distinctive makeup, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene in the beginning where I think he might it might be like he's flirting with another man, but I'm not entirely sure. That was how I read it anyway.
Yeah. I wonder if homosexuality was as if the hate against it was as established back then. I
think in the US it was for
right.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about Europe or France specifically.
And this is another love triangle here because there are two kind of primary suitors, and the one who loses is named Sleeky Sam, which I love. When Sleeky Sam is rejected, he swears revenge and kidnappings and hijinks.
Yeah, well, he swears revenge by trying to kidnap Parson Sue, and then the other suitor, I'm pretty sure most of this happens off screen, so I might be misremembering the details somewhat, because it's just a single title card that explains most of this. But the other suitor, who's sort of this like main cowboy guy, is sort of set up as he's going to go rescue her, and then just immediately is shot and taken out of the picture. And so then like the rest of the town has to kind of band together to rescue Parson Sue. And that too is like a cool reversal of, like, I feel like Western story tropes haven't really been as established as I would think they would be later. Like, this is early enough in film history that it's like, Westerns can be whatever.
Yeah, I suppose so. I know Westerns are really popular at this point, but I guess everybody's playing by their own book.
But Alicia is already just being like, nah, I'm doing it my own way.
Yeah. That's something great about her. She really bucks a lot of trends in ways that are interesting.
And it makes her movies really, I think, really interesting and refreshing to watch, because so many other movies from this time period are very samey and very kind of stick to certain traditions, where she's just like, I don't give a shit, I'm doing whatever.
Do you want to talk about starting something, or
is
it too baffling?
I don't know what to say about it other than I'm baffled. It's just really weird.
Yeah.
I think the performances in it are very funny. Like, especially the like police officer who shows up. Just like the physical acting in it is really, really good.
Yeah, it's real goofy. It's a lot of people making like silly faces because they think they're hypnotized. Or no.
They think they're poisoned.
They think they're poisoned.
And they have to like do a conga line in order to not be poisoned anymore.
I don't know. Should we talk about it? It's I don't know. It's set in a room where a bunch of, very inexplicably, there's like a bunch of like kind of women's lib stuff, like accoutrement, like kind of hanging around.
Yeah, like suffrage signs and things.
Yeah. Signs like vote for women, woman for our new president, and down with man. And so like it's completely immaterial to the story itself, but it's like set in like a suffragette's office, I guess. There is how does this whole thing start with the hypnotism?
It's so weird. It is funny though, because like watching this movie, I was like, is there some like contemporary political subtext that I'm not getting? Like, is this like a satire of something that I just don't understand?
Right. A lot of this movie is really inexplicable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a man named Jones who walks in who like has a drinking problem, and another person, she comes up with the idea to help him with his drinking problem by hypnotizing him into thinking alcohol is poison. And she puts a little poison symbol on the bottle to really sell the illusion. So he ends up drinking it and thinking he's poisoned after he was hypnotized, and a succeeding group of people, all not being hypnotized but being under they walk in and drink from the bottle, and then Jones comes back in after he's hopping around like acting wild because he's like, oh, I'm poisoned, I'm holding my stomach, I'm jumping around, and then so they start thinking they're poisoned, and it just begins a conga line of people who are jumping around and making silly faces because they think they're poisoned, and then they find out that they're not. That's that's the movie.
Yeah, that is.
It's very strange.
Yeah, it is rather baffling, and I definitely got the impression from it that there is some sort of greater sort of subtext to it that I'm just not picking up on.
Mm-hmm.
But what that is, I don't know.
There were a couple of other movies that survived from Elise Guy at this time, but they were only just restored recently. They're on this Pioneers of Women Filmmakers box set, and I was not able to grab them in time, so we weren't able to watch them.
They are not available.
Solax
They're
films.
not available online anywhere. As far as I can tell, you can only watch them in a box set.
But looks like a good box set. Comes with some essays and stuff.
Yeah, it comes with a lot of stuff. So
yeah, we could move on to
our sponsor
Elise's,
for the episode.
Kino Lorber sponsor. I mean, honestly, that would make a lot of sense if Kino were to sponsor us. For any sponsor.
Yeah.
Although we do talk about, talk about and link to a lot of uploaded on YouTube Kino property.
With all of the getting sewn into a mattress films, we could, Casper mattresses, something like that.
Oh, true. That would be.
I feel like we've made that joke already.
We have such a short memory for this podcast. Okay, why don't you pronounce it for me? Her understudy's name, because Louis
Feuillade.
Yeah. All of this, we really need to learn French. Like, honestly, if I'm really trying to go hard for this podcast, I should just learn French.
Yeah.
Louis Feuillade made a couple of films this year, but my favorite was The Trust, or Battles for Money.
This might be my favorite of the year. I'm not sure. Even though it is French, it does feel like it's also pretty relevant to the time in the U.S. in 1911.
Well, I mean, I would make a lot of comparisons to A Corner in Wheat.
Mm-hmm.
It's A Corner in Rubber is this movie with more like intrigue.
It's that, I think, with a little bit of what was it, like the white slave trade?
How so?
Just with the kidnappings and there's, like you said, there's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of like backstabbing and sneaking around and like plots and
yeah, it's pretty plot heavy. It's only 25 minutes long, and a lot happens in it. It makes sense that you would be into this one, Glenn, because it does seem like a kind of proto noir crime film in some ways.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. It also just has some fun language in it, at least in the translation of the intertitles. there are some dastardly businessmen who are the villains, who are referred to as businessmen without scruple. Which is great. I'm gonna have to start using that as an insult. You are without scruples, sir.
No scruples found.
And they hire. Well, there's a I guess sort of a scientist who discovers a formula for artificial rubber.
Yep.
And he is returning from abroad to
on his rubber fact-finding mission.
Yes. And the sort of the rubber barons find out about this and want to put a stop to it because it's going to put them out of business. And so they hire a private detective to do their dirty work.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't know if I want to go through like all. There's a lot of plot to get through, so I don't know if we necessarily need to go through the entire thing. But I mean, the important part is that the movie ends up with the good business people who want to, make the artificial rubber, and the bad business people, the rubber barons, both end up hiring the same private detective.
Yeah.
One to kidnap the scientist, one to protect him. And so the private detective, being a capitalist, ends up kidnapping him, and bringing him to the caverns beneath the rubber baron's cliff house, which, what a lovely sentence that is. I mean, if you're gonna own a cliff house, you got to get one with a cavern underneath.
Oh, absolutely. That's 100% true. It's the villainous bat cave, basically.
Yeah.
And my favorite part of this scene actually is how the rubber barons, not robber barons, by the way, but rubber barons, they're wearing their like tuxes and top hats inside of this cave.
Yeah, with masks.
And as the guy comes in to disguise their identities, they put on these big kind of, I don't know, the masks. It's a black mask that you put over your eyes.
Yeah.
And so it's like such a look,
Yeah.
They look ridiculous.
They're the quintessential Edwardian supervillains.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that like the PI. So what ends up happening is they're trying to like kidnap this guy and extort him to give them the recipe for the artificial rubber,
the formula.
And yeah, the formula.
If this movie was made today, it would 100% be an algorithm.
Oh my god, gross. And they say like, we're not trying to hurt you. We're like offering, even though we're holding you at gunpoint, we're going to give you 50,000 francs if you give us the recipe, the formula for the artificial rubber. And he's like, well, I guess I have no choice. And so they offer him a pen, and he goes like, oh no, I've got one. And so he writes it down on the paper, and they're like, you know what? Thanks a lot. Here's your check. See you later, guy. And so they put a blindfold back on the scientist and walk him out of the cave. And as soon as he's made his exit, they realize that the pen was disappearing ink, and so they thought they had the formula, but it is gone. He's swindled them.
Yeah, I love too when that happens. The private detective, who's been sort of like one of the main villains from this whole thing. The businessmen are all freaking out, and his response is kind of like, if there was dialogue, it'd be like, all right, that was pretty cool. Like, I'll give you that.
So here's the thing. I don't know if this was textual. But because the PI got hired by both parties, right? My thought was that maybe he was doing a Yojimbo kind of thing, where he was playing them against each other. And this was never shown in the movie, but like, what if he gave the scientist the disappearing ink pen, right? So he was able to bring the scientist to the one party, but then also fulfill his obligation to the other party and get paid by both, right?
That would make the movie even better if that had been after the reveal of the disappearing ink. We found out that was what had happened.
Yeah,
man,
I want to believe that.
This movie is ripe for a remake, I think.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Once we can get together, I think it would be a lot of fun if we like did some
modern retellings of these.
Yeah, that'd be so fun. Yeah. Especially the ones that aren't like that wouldn't require Legend of a Ghost levels of money. You know, this one could be pretty cheap to make.
I mean, hey, we could just throw some sheets on some cars and make Legend of a Ghost.
Yeah,
light some fires in a cave. Feuillade made, or we watched 2 other Feuillade movies from this year, which are I don't know if we have as much to say about those.
Not really. He also made a movie called The Defect, which has some good messaging to it, I think. But it is way too long.
If only it were shorter, I think it would have been really, really strong if it had been cut down and it had been more concise.
Yeah.
But yeah, it drags a lot. But it does reveal the sort of contemporary, I guess, prejudice against people who work in dance halls.
Yeah, I don't know what that implies exactly.
I mean, I get the impression it's sort of like a loosely veiled euphemism for
like prostitution.
If not prostitution, then like what's the word I'm thinking of? The like old-timey stripping.
Burlesque?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's not really what burlesque is, but
well, yeah, I mean it does contextualize that in that way. It's about a quote waitress in a brasserie, which is a French restaurant, which I didn't know, in the Latin Quarter where loose women congregate. Unquote. And yeah, so briefly, it's about a customer sitting down, seeing promise in her, and giving her a job to leave this place that she works, and she ends up kind of working as this. She ends up taking over the position from him at this like kind of charity, basically, and she becomes like a saint, that as they're called. Like she's called a saint because she does all of this wonderful charity, and then her ex comes into the picture and tries to get hired at her charity or like work for her or something, or just reconnect with her in some way, and she rejects him, and so he writes an angry letter that tells the world that she used to work in a dance hall, and this is so shameful that she's kicked out, no one respects her anymore, and she loses her job. She's laughed out of any new job that she tries to get, and she considers jumping out of a window. And then in a title card in the end, she goes like, it explains that she found some new opportunities for doing the same kind of charity work in the Far East, and she goes there instead. And so it has, it's got stuff to say about like, sexism and the way that women are treated in their lines of work, and garbagey men blackmailing people
in ways that sadly still feel somewhat relevant.
Sure, yeah, but imagine how tight and great that would have been in a 1-reel film instead of like a 3 or 4-reel film.
Yeah. But still, like I do appreciate Feuillade, injecting his sort of social commentary into these kind of more pulpy, like lurid stories.
Yeah.
This one's much less kind of lurid than The Trust is. Which again is also another thing that makes it less entertaining to watch.
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
Well, Speaking of long movies,
Oh boy,
we could
a
talk
lot of
about
those.
the Italian epics as they're beginning to spring up this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have the first Italian feature film.
Yeah, and the earliest surviving intact feature film.
Yeah, very significant, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is L'Inferno,
L'Inferno. Yeah,
or an adaptation of Dante's Inferno.
yeah. Yeah, I didn't love it. I don't necessarily think it needed to be a feature. But yeah, I mean, you can tell a lot of work went into this one, and it does feel.
I think it took 2 years to shoot this movie.
Yeah, and it feels big. You know, like it feels. The scale of it definitely does feel on a not necessarily bigger than other movies that we've seen, but I think the length combined with just what they're putting on screen does give it the feeling of an epic, which is cool.
Yeah. This is based on Dante's Inferno. I haven't read the book, but
Neither have I.
basically, the reason why Glenn didn't love it is because this is pretty weak from like a structure and storytelling perspective, even though I think visually and vibe-wise it's really cool. Because it's how long? It's an hour and 10 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie is basically Virgil takes Dante into the Inferno, shows him one thing, shows him another thing, and then repeat for an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's very light on structure, and it's not like super challenging in any or adventurous in any way on that front. But I actually, I think if it weren't this movie, I would be incredibly bored by it. But the fact that it is so like spooky and like dark and grim, I mean, it is based on Dante's Inferno. I enjoyed it a lot. It's like it's a vibe watching this movie. This
sure.
would be one that would be good to have on in the background of a party.
Yeah, that is true. It's mostly vibe, and it does create some really wild imagery and just like, put some stuff on screen that you're like, oh damn, I didn't expect this.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of darkness for something of this era too, like grim,
mm-hmm.
dark theming and everything.
Yeah, like a lot of it uses both actual locations and some sets and sort of some combinations of the two. And some of the set work is really elaborate and cool. It's full of smoke and like spooky like rock formations and things.
Yeah, I mean it's trying to like it does a good job creating an image of hell in front of you.
Yeah. And definitely towards the beginning, you know, it's less surreal and it's less sort of hellish, and is a bit more just sort of like, there's just some people out in a field. Like this isn't that crazy. And then as he descends the layers, it gets like more and more. You're like, oh, okay, I see where this movie's going now.
Yeah. This, I mean, I know this isn't super relevant, but I went to this last year, just before the shutdown. I went to Singapore, and there is this place in Singapore called the Haw Par Villa, which is a theme park that was. Do you know the like Tiger Balm ointment? It's like this kind of just ointment that you could put on, and like basically
made from real tigers.
Yes, sure. But the family that put it together or that invented it, they're like super Buddhist, right? And so they made this this like Chinese mythology and history / like Buddhism education theme park, and the most famous section of their theme park is called the 10 Circles of Hell, which is apparently like basically every kid in Singapore has a memory of being scarred by going to this exhibit at some point in their childhood, because it's describing just all of the various tortures that you'll go through for different reasons in Buddhist hell.
Oh, I remember. I believe I've seen pictures that you've shown me.
Yeah. It's so cool, but it's like very elaborate. You know, it's like, oh, for lying, you'll get sawed in half, and they have like a diorama of somebody getting sawn in half. And they talk about Dante's Inferno in the exhibit of just like other depictions of hell in a sort of educational way, which I thought was really interesting. And this is the same sort of thing, because each of the different vignettes in this movie are different types of sinners and depicting the ways that they're being tortured, such as carnal sinners who are like in a tornado flying through the air of like human naked bodies. There are gluttons who lie naked on the ground getting rained on their entire, like in the mud or whatever. And then there are like suicides which become like tree people in hell, and like when their branches are cut, blood spews out. Like very, very dark. Like I love the imagery in this movie.
Yeah. With all of those vignettes too, I think it's like you get through those, you know, the obvious crimes that people would do, and then it starts getting into stuff that is so specific and so like almost just so like petty crimes that I'm like, are these? I haven't read Dante's Inferno, but it does seem like some of the crimes people are getting like eaten in hell for are just like, it's just Dante airing his personal grievances.
Oh, absolutely. That's something that I've heard about Dante's. Like one things that I know about Dante's Inferno is that yes, he was trying to scare people away from sinning and because they'll go to hell, but also there were like just all of these notable figures from Italy at that time that he just didn't like, and he just said, "Oh, they're in hell," you know, like he was just being extremely messy with this book.
Well, also it's almost like the sins that people are getting punished for are so hyper specific that it's like, okay, like who did that annoyed you? You know, it's like those, you know, all the people who borrowed money from their brother-in-law and then didn't want to give it back, but then did give it back, but were like a dick about it. And then they went to the opera and they didn't invite their brother-in-law. I mean, they knew it was their favorite composer. All those people, they get fed to the fire snake. And that's like, okay, Dante, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. You have anything else on this one?
Not really. I did the Rick Dalton thing and pointed at the screen when it says "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here."
Indeed.
I was like, it said the thing. Another Italian epic is The Fall of Troy.
Yep.
You know, based on the Iliad. I like this one quite a bit more, I think. It's shorter. It's not quite feature length.
35 minutes, I think.
Yeah. But the scale of it is kind of insane.
Yeah, I thought. Very, very big sets, huge crowds.
Like, I didn't think that they were full sets at first. I was like, oh, there's like a backdrop. But then there'd be actors interacting with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, they built this whole thing.
And this one also, like, I think the Inferno, it's all meant to be played as one movie, but The Fall of Troy, like some of those two real D.W. Griffith movies, it's split into just two parts. They're like two 15-minute parts that are demarcated from each other.
Oh, I don't know if I realized that.
Yeah, there's a part that was like end of part 1, beginning of part 2, you know? So I doubt they were meant to be played separately, but at least like the reels themselves were delineated.
There's some cool like This doesn't necessarily have like effects in it per se. The Inferno definitely does. It has a lot of effects in it. But this has some really cool, almost like forced perspective, like miniatures incorporated into the set. So like, there's a really cool shot where Paris is on his balcony, looking out over Troy as it's burning. And we see like a miniature city that's on fire, that's sort of off the edge of this balcony. I was very impressed with that shot. One of the directors of this movie, Giovanni Pastrone. I'm probably butchering his name. Giovanni. I'm just gonna call him Giovanni. My close personal friend.
I saw that name and I called him Giovanni Pastrami, and my Italian girlfriend said that I was racist.
Spaghetti bolognese. Anyway, Giovanni will go on to direct Cabiria in 1914, which is it's not one of the first feature films, but it's a significant one.
It's a very notable one. Yeah.
Another notable feature film that I watched was the Defense of Sevastopol, which is the first Russian feature film.
Mm-hmm.
It is probably about 4 to 5 times longer than it needs to be.
Oof.
You did not watch this one, correct?
I was scared off of it.
Yeah, I mean,
it looked boring and long.
the pacing in this thing it might be the slowest paced movie I've ever seen.
Oh my god.
It's thankfully I had some fun Russian classical music that I was listening to, which was the most enjoyable part of it. There is like the scope of it is impressive. It's about an hour long, but it could easily be like 20 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like there's some really cool shots in it, but then those shots last for like a full 4 minutes, and it's like, yeah, we get it. we see it. Yep. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Still going, huh? But I mean, there are definitely moments that kind of peek through that are pretty good. It's shot on the real locations where the historical event that they're recreating actually happened, which is kind of cool. There's a bit right at the beginning where they're introducing some of the major players, the sort of generals and admirals and things that were involved, and they get their own sort of like moving picture portraits, sort of like they're kind of sitting like they're in a portrait, but they're kind of looking around all moody, and like their name is at the bottom. I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh, kind of like the introduction to The Girl Who Didn't Believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah. But we get a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, not one that I think is really necessary to watch all the way through, but another significant sort of landmark film.
Yeah. Though the piece of trivia that I know about this is that it is the first film ever to use 2 cameras, is at least according to what Wikipedia says.
Yeah. I tried to verify that, and I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Although I couldn't find anything that is like definitively. I couldn't find any like good source for it though.
Yeah.
So
that's true. We don't know how much we can trust that stuff. I mean, that Max Linder movie where he was, or those Lumiere movies where you saw another camera on film. Technically, 2 cameras.
Yeah, and like I don't really know what the details delineating that are, but if true, then cool.
Yeah, cool if true.
Yeah. And then I mean we've got some the usual potpourri of other films that were released this year.
Yeah, although I guess I wouldn't call it an epic so much, but Pinocchio.
Yeah, well, Pinocchio
is Italian.
This is true. Yeah. First Pinocchio movie. That's also a significant landmark, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And oh my god, this movie. This movie's wild.
It is pretty wild. It's not, I wouldn't call it the traditional Pinocchio story.
Well, so here's the thing. Like, this movie inspired me to go like, okay, like, is this just going way off script with Pinocchio or what, you know? And I'm not aware of the original Pinocchio story. I only know the Disney one, you know? And
the one with Jonathan Taylor Thomas? Is that his name?
What?
This is a terrible joke. I'm sorry.
Someone listening will get that joke.
If I said the name right.
So this movie is kind of a more faithful adaptation of Pinocchio than the Disney movie is. It's funny. There are all of these movies that we're getting surprised at, like how dark they are, that are especially fairy tale adaptations.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm realizing is that maybe a lot of these things, we're used to the sanitized versions of these fairy tales, and these early films are showing us the true thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the original Pinocchio book. Apologies to anyone who's familiar with this, but the original Pinocchio book, like, Pinocchio's not supposed to be a good guy, like, in any way, or likable in any way. It's like this kind of cautionary tale of just, like, you know, don't be like Pinocchio because he sucks, you know. For example, we all know Jiminy Cricket. From the Disney movie,
his conscience,
right? Yeah. So the Jiminy Cricket is not in this, but I was looking into some of
soon to be played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the upcoming live-action Disney remake.
Well, so that movie, I don't think it's Disney. I think it's going to be on Netflix, and like it's going to be co-directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it's supposed to be, yeah. I mean, oh wait, you're talking about there's a live-action Disney movie?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Guillermo del Toro, coming out later this year or next year, is making a stop-motion animated Pinocchio movie that is supposed to be a more faithful adaptation of the original darkness of Pinocchio.
Incredible.
It's also going to have Patrick McHale writing from Over the Garden Wall. It's going to be sick. I'm so excited for it. But oh my god, what was I talking about?
Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a big old jerk.
Okay, Jiminy Cricket, right? We know Jiminy Cricket. He's not in this version of Pinocchio, but we know him from the Disney version. In the original Pinocchio, he's not named. He's just a talking cricket. But Jiminy Cricket's in the entire Disney movie. In the original Pinocchio, Pinocchio throws a hammer at this cricket and kills him. He doesn't mean to kill the cricket, but he's like, oh, oops, you know? And so the cricket continues to be the conscience or whatever, but he's a ghost. Like, it's a ghost cricket.
Oh my god, it's American Werewolf in London.
It is American Werewolf.
I never realized that American Werewolf in London is actually Pinocchio. That's insane.
I mean, this is faithful, although I will say that this is a Pinocchio movie where he doesn't lie. There's no lying, and his nose gets bigger in this movie. He just has a big nose, and he is just an asshole, and he just goes around goes around causing trouble.
Yeah.
Where do I even begin with this?
It felt very vaudevillian to me.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I think just in the way that it's sort of staged, and I guess the sort of like the kind of physical comedy aspect of it, the slapstickiness.
Mm-hmm.
Although it uses real outdoor locations, which it's definitely much more of a thing now in 1911, but it still feels, I don't know, it still feels a little bit novel just to have a movie shot in real places.
Yeah, I mean, this is real big budget. This is an hour long. It goes over a lot
Wait,
of...
it's an hour long?
Yeah.
I didn't watch the whole thing then, I don't think.
Oh, yeah,
I
man.
think I
Like,
missed out on some of this. This isn't an epic then.
yeah. There were some shorter versions, but at least like the most fully released version, it's an hour long.
Oh man,
and like
I got duped. I thought
so
it was
much
short.
stuff happens in this movie.
Oh man.
So, and again, a lot of the stuff that happens, I thought was like, oh my god, what are they doing in this? But it turns out that it was in the original Pinocchio. So, for example, so the second that Pinocchio awakens, he like runs wild through the streets like Frankenstein's
Right.
monster.
That part I've seen.
Yeah, and like a bunch of like Javert-looking guys grab him. And Geppetto like gets arrested because like they think he's like mistreating Pinocchio, which is in the original. There's a part where Pinocchio accidentally lights his feet on fire. And there's a cool scene where like Geppetto's like helping him fix his feet because he just like kind of saws off his foot and then like puts a new one on. And he's like, oh yeah, don't do that again. Pinocchio is playing with some kids outside, and he steps in a bear trap, and his leg gets stuck in the bear trap, and the guy who owns the bear trap grabs him and then locks him up like a dog and puts a collar and leash on him. He gets out, and then some random people just grab him and then try to lynch him. They hang him from a tree. So you see Pinocchio like hanging from a noose.
Didn't see that part.
No, yeah. In the original Pinocchio book, the original ending of Pinocchio that I don't think was in the book, but it was the original intended ending, is Pinocchio just getting executed in this fashion. And the quote from the book: A tempestuous northerly wind began to blow and roar angrily. It beat the poor puppet from side to side, making him swing violently like the clatter of a bell ringing for a wedding. And the swinging gave him atrocious spasms. His breath failed him, and he could say no more. He shut his eyes, opened his mouth, stretched his legs, gave a long shudder, and hung stiff and insensible.
Damn.
Then the blue fairy saves Pinocchio. Some random blue fairy saves Pinocchio, gives him 4 golden coins to take back to Geppetto. While he's on his way back to Geppetto, who are they? They're a cat and a fox come up to him and say, "Hey kid, like bury these coins and they'll turn into a tree and that grows coins." And so he's like, "Oh, hot dog, I'm gonna do that." and so the fox and the cat come back and they steal the money that he buried. And then Pinocchio, on his way back to check on the tree the next morning, he sees the fox and the cat living it up in a bar. And he's like, they stole my money.
A fox and a cat walk into a bar. And
I don't even know how this happens, but apparently it also happens in the book. But they put Pinocchio in prison for the crime of being robbed. This movie's wild. He escapes from prison, and then he swims for 99 days, and then he gets swallowed by the whale, which is one of the things that I remember from the Disney movie. He meets Geppetto in the whale's stomach, and then the whale takes them to Canada, and they get involved. They get involved in a war between Canadians and Native Americans, and so all of that happens. Then the Canadians put him in a cannon and then launch him all the way back to Italy. Yeah, and then he goes to an animal world and gets turned into a donkey.
Okay. So that happens after the whale.
Yes. And there's actually a really cool shot while he's getting turned into a donkey where you see him looking into his reflection in the water, and so the reflection is looking straight at the camera, and the camera is like right above his head. And I couldn't tell actually if it was an actual reflection or if it was like some kind of post effect of like double exposure. But like basically he's like turning into a donkey and he gets these giant donkey ears. And so he's like seeing his ears being revealed and like looking at himself in the mirror. It's a pretty well done shot. And he makes a friend in this animal world who also ends up getting turned into a donkey. That same random blue fairy saves him again, but doesn't save his friend. So his friend stays as a donkey, and then Pinocchio goes back, and then he just turns into a real boy, and that's the end of the movie. It's insane. This movie's nuts.
I feel so cheated that I looked this movie up and I found I don't know, like 10-minute version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't notice this movie until you said like, oh, like check out Pinocchio, and
I didn't even know what I was talking about.
Boy, did I check it out. Yeah, this movie was wild.
Damn. Well, I'll have to watch that now. In addition to movies for next episode. Yeah, that's nuts. Another kind of crazy movie, I guess, is The Pirates of 1920.
Yeah.
Which is another Sky Pirate movie, which is
another prime candidate for a Glenn favorite.
Yeah. I do love how like the Sky Pirate movie is kind of becoming a subgenre.
That's so fun. Yeah, I love that.
And yeah, it's very reminiscent of Walter R. Booth's sort of airship films.
Mm-hmm.
Airship heist movies. And like those, it's very big and ambitious and pretty well made.
Yeah.
It is sort of structurally, I guess, is sort of a like woman is kidnapped while a man comes to try to save her. But unlike all of the D.W. Griffith movies like that, this one has sky pirates, so it is automatically better. Also, the like male lead of this movie is named Jack Manley.
Oh my god!
Which is the most on the nose name for a hero ever. It's great. But much like Parson Sue, the ending is missing, which is gross.
I mean, I think I can figure out what happens.
Yeah, me too.
Based on,
but it's still like it's frustrating.
Yeah, there's it ends with a point of her. She's kidnapped on the ship, and she gets a hold of a bomb, and she says like, "I'll blow us all up if you don't land the Zeppelin." So they do. Then they chase after her, but it's in parallel action. You see that the cops are arriving, and then that's when the movie ends.
Yeah.
But so you don't see the kind of rescue and confrontation.
But I had that thing. I was like, oh, no, I wanted to see the end.
Yeah, and this one's only available on the BFI player, so I'm glad that I was able to figure out how to make that work. I'll upload it on YouTube so that we can watch it there.
So that we rascally Americans can see it.
Yeah. I love also that this is set only 9 years in the future.
Yeah.
Like it's imagining like sky pirates and steampunk marvels, but it's 1920.
Yeah. I mean, like, on one hand, a lot of that stuff, like, airship technology did advance quite a bit by 1920. Like,
yeah.
By 1916 or whenever, like, they were using airships in war to bomb cities and things. So,
you mean by 1911? Because that was in the
no, but
I
mean in real life though.
Yeah. The in the intros in the Italo-Turkish War.
That was an airplane, though. Not a Zeppelin, though.
Oh, not a Zeppelin. Yeah. Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Walter R. Booth did make some movies this year, though.
Yeah.
We don't get to see Aerial Anarchists, which is a lost film, which was the sort of capper of his trilogy of sky pirate movies.
So sad.
But we get to see The Automatic Motorist, which is very similar to the Motorist.
Yeah, kind of a remake.
Kind of a loose remake. But this one follows a couple on, I guess, their wedding day.
Yeah.
Who decide to go driving with a mad scientist and his robot driver.
Classic wedding activity.
And then they get stopped by a cop and decide to tie him up to the back of their car.
And then a dog bites the cop on the butt, and then the dog's driving. The dog's kind of tailing behind the car as well.
And then, much like the Motorist, the car ends up, driving up the sides of buildings and into outer space. This time to Saturn, which in this movie is full of goblin kids. This is a pretty wild one.
Yeah, and I like like in the Motorist, like the car drives around on the rings of Saturn, but in this one it kind of goes onto the planet, and the way they depict that is the car just like smashing through the image of Saturn, like it's a piece of paper that tears away, and then you see it a lot more close up as on when they're leaving Saturn, like the people are kind of climbing out of this like hole in the planet onto the ring itself. It's very kind of non-literal.
Walter R. Booth also made a significant animated film called Animated Putty, which I don't know if this is technically the first movie to use clay or putty for stop motion.
It's a little difficult to tell just based on some of those older ones. But this is the first one to really significantly use it, or entirely.
And to really kind of draw attention to it, that within the film it is meant to be clay, kind of. Yeah. This movie did kind of send me down a rabbit hole over the actual word claymation, which I always thought was coined by Aardman, which is the company that made Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run.
Yep.
But it was actually trademarked by Will Vinton Studios, which was the precursor to Leica.
Oh.
And Will Vinton was a huge stop motion innovator. Although a lot of his stuff is commercial work, as opposed to like narrative film stuff. But yeah, this movie definitely made me. It's the movie that every kid makes when they discover that stop motion is a thing. Yeah.
It's a lot of just messing around with it, but it's pretty well done. I think that it's basically just all of these like sculptures and faces being made out of the clay, and you're seeing them forming, and the final product is like a very well done clay sculpture. So well done that it almost made me feel like is this being done in reverse, and they like have like a nice thing that they're taking apart, I couldn't really quite tell, because like the way that it comes together is so clean and masterful in a way, that it seems like it would be more intuitive that they have like nice clay things that they're like mushing and taking apart, but I don't really know.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, it's either that or they're just very good at, very quickly doing some very intricate clay sculpting.
Yeah.
Reversing something is always, I feel like, such a simple effect that people don't always notice. There's a lot of times Even in movies
Right.
now, where it's like, how'd they do that? Oh, and then it's just like, oh, we just reversed it, and it's like, oh, of course.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice it in Frankenstein last year. So
yeah. A couple other just, I guess, things that are worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, there's another cartoon.
Yeah.
Which is Winsor McCay, the famous cartoonist of the New York Herald and his moving comics, also known as Little Nemo.
Yeah. This sort of less form or less accurate title, but much easier to use.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a live action short with animation incorporated into it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole live action framing device is sort of a justification for showing you the animation, where Winsor McCay is basically the famous cartoonist, is
Of the New York Herald.
and is being challenged to make moving comics. So some like big, like, I don't know, bigwigs or whatever are just like, hey, Winsor McCay, make 4,000 drawings in 1 month, and you know, we'll make a cartoon, you know.
Yeah.
And so there's some good like comedy of him like rolling like giant like barrels of ink and like big pallets of paper into his room, you know. So it's depicting the process of him spending the month like drawing all of the
4,000 frames.
4,000 frames, yeah, and then it plays the movie itself.
Yeah.
And it's very, very well done. I mean, you know, he is a talented artist, and he's already been making comic strips like Little Nemo and Slumberland, which is what this is based on. And there's a lot of very smooth motion. There are things rotating in 3D space.
That stuff,
which
kind of blew my mind.
Yeah,
bit.
which it takes a lot of like artistic prowess, I think, to do that in animation, especially so early on.
Yeah.
They use squash and stretch, which you know, feels like the right way to do it. People are already figuring out that that's what you need to be doing to make animation look good.
Yeah.
Something I was wondering was like whether this is whether there's any rotoscoping in this, because some of it looks like weirdly smooth in the way that a lot of rotoscoping looks, but it could just be that that's just the way that he did it, you know.
Yeah, I get the impression that it's more that just a lot of work went into it, you know. And that Winsor McCay is good at drawing.
Yeah,
turns out. Although this is also a movie that is like, why do the olden times got to be racist? There's
one of the characters. Yeah,
there's some very racist, stereotypical, like caricature in this, which is like, damn it, olden times. Why can't you be more like Dr. Seuss?
Oh my god.
Topical.
We're dating our podcast. Although a year from now, no one will remember that everybody just lost their minds over Dr. Seuss.
Well,
but
a couple people lost their minds over Dr. Seuss.
Right.
A couple of very silly people decided to get very angry about Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, not silly in a good way, silly in a dumb way.
Yeah.
I will just also highlight that like there's a dragon in this, and the animation on the dragon is so cool.
Yeah.
Like the dragon looks amazing.
Yeah.
I think these are all characters like from Little Nemo and Slumberland, which I haven't really read much of. I've seen like a couple strips, but I've never really looked into it.
Yeah,
but
same.
I think the dragon is from the comic strip, and like Little Nemo is also in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's also like, in addition to being, the animation itself was really good. It's very, I think the level of detail in the drawings is pretty elaborate. It's almost, I kind of get the sense that like, as animation developed, they learned to kind of streamline things and simplify things, and this is like,
Yeah.
It would probably be done
labor intensive.
Yeah, it. I can feel the labor coming off the screen. It's like this was so much work.
I mean, probably why they made a whole framing device showing you how much work it was.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I think this is definitely the most elaborate hand-drawn animation that we've seen that has probably been done at this point.
Most impressive too.
Yeah. There was another Charles Urban sort of documentary film that was shot in color.
Kinema color.
Yeah. Which, did we explain what that was last time?
Yeah. A two color process that made kind of funky looking colors.
Also very labor intensive. Banks of the Nile is this film. It's not really that different from the other Kinema color films that we've watched, but there were some cool moments in it where sort of fast movement, because of the way that the color process works, sort of creates like a rainbow trail effect almost.
Yeah.
That was super cool. Another just very weird thing that I had to write down about this movie is looking it up on Letterboxd, the top review for Banks of the Nile is apparently actually referring to a 1981 3-hour TV movie called Artemis 81, starring Sting from The Police. Because I was like, this is not describing this movie at all, and it's talking about Sting. So I had to like try to figure. I had to like look up character names and like try to figure out what it was. And I was like, oh
my god,
it's a 3-hour TV movie. Don't know why they got their wires crossed and just posted this review.
That's funny.
Under Banks of the Nile. So I got a chuckle out of that.
I think it's interesting how, they've got this new natural color process, quote unquote natural color process. And because showing something in color, in true color, is kind of new, they're kind of reverting to a previous style of films, because this is basically an actuality.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so was the beach one from the other year. This is basically like a Lumiere style, go to a place and point a camera at like a culture and see what they look like, but this time in color. And so, it's in Egypt. And one of the things that I thought was actually kind of interesting was, Kinema color has a lot of flaws, as you were describing. But it actually doesn't show white skin super well. It shows it okay, but like white skin sometimes looks a little overexposed and a little just kind of weird. And this is showing like dark skinned, like black people, like in Egypt. Yeah. And I think their skin actually looks a lot better on the Kinema color than white people.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. I hadn't really picked up on that, and that's super interesting. Because there are still like, I still hear about problems of like cinematographers that only know how to light white people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. Like this like super early color film was like, yeah, if you're too light skinned, you just look blown out like a ghost.
Yeah. Yeah, probably just by accident that it happened to look better for black people. But Kinema color, come back and teach white cinematographies how it works.
Yeah, they all have to learn on Kinema color now.
Well, let me just run through. There was this one Max Linder movie that we can wrap up with, which is called Max's Tragedy, which isn't actually that. I think most of the movie is not actually that good. It's just like some kind of broad comedy that's it's okay. It's about like two people who are in sort of an arranged marriage, and they're trying to gross each other out so that the other person will refuse them. And one of the gross out ways is, I believe, like somebody putting on blackface in a sense, which is not good. But it's mostly kind of a light comedy movie, but both of them end up becoming actors. which is sort of both of their dreams. And when they realize that they both want to be actors, they get together and they fall in love and everything. And toward the end of the movie, or like once they've gotten together, there's a title card that says like a couple years later. And then it portrays them like with a baby, and Max is like an alcoholic, and like everything, and like they're living a terrible life. They all like, they hate everything, and everything's terrible, and they're like on the verge of death. And you're like, oh my god, this is like weirdly dark for a Max Linder movie. And then they die, and you're like, Jesus Christ, like what is happening? This is supposed to be a comedy movie. And just as they die, the camera like pulls back, and you see that they're on a stage, and you see the audience come up
clapping.
The
curtain falls.
The curtain falls, and they get up and take a bow, and you find out that they're like the actors, right? But this wild metatextual thing happens where they're giving the audience this, like they're tricking the audience basically, and then they pull out and reveal that it was all on stage, which is really amazing.
Yeah. And it's a physical camera move, like the camera is actually moving back, which is which feels very different for this time period. Like there's not a lot of camera movement happening, at least not besides like some pans and some tilts on a fixed tripod or something, or on a train. But yeah, it's such a good reveal. And it's also the kind of reveal that probably wouldn't work as well in a modern movie, because the sort of staginess of the last scene of them of their life in shambles.
Yeah.
You know, it is believable as a stage once the reveal is made. But before that, you're totally into it of like, oh, it's just a simple, like straight locked off shot of like their living room.
Oh, it's funny, yeah.
Like most other movies. And then we get this like wild camera move back to reveal the audience that's in front of them. It was amazing. I was so impressed with that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was super cool. Very, very adventurous, formal stuff from Max Linder.
Yeah.
And I guess that'll about wrap it up.
Yep. Another year in the books.
Another year in the books. Moving on to 1912 soon. If you would like to keep up with some behind the scenes stuff, or I don't know, look at images that we post, we have an Instagram, which is linked in the description, and it's Instagram. It's at 1 week 1 year, I think, spelled out. But why did I pick a podcast that could be numerals or could be spelled? Bad choice. And you can follow us on Twitter, where we post about our new episodes when they come out. Or you can subscribe to us on YouTube, which I'm looking at you, YouTube, hello, or on your podcast app, which you probably are already, but unless you're listening to Spotify or whatever, subscribe to us. And I guess that's about it. On to 1912, moving through the 1910s decade. Glenn, I'll see you next year.
See you next year.
Treating me like a little wooden boy. Well, girl, I'm telling you, for you I do got wooden boy. I'd let you pull my strings any day. I'm your puppet, baby, spinning right round and round like a record player. You're running round my thoughts every day, doing laps of the tennis courts in my brain. Let's stop, take a break. We could go to Stockholm or another capital city like Helsinki or Rome. Home.